Hello and welcome to the Gaggle Over Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. Here with me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, last week we spoke at length about the second round of the Romanian election, and what was striking about it was that the math never made any sense. It was a little like the 2020 election in the United States, which everybody immediately declared to be the freest, fairest, most transparent, most well-conducted election in U.S. history. And yet there's still the question mark, how did Joe Biden get 81 million votes, when he was way more than what Obama got, way more than Kamala Harris got? It's an anomaly. It's when you draw out the graphs of Democratic votes over the years, whoom, that 2020 election just stands out like a sore thumb.
I think those Zuckerbox made a
I
difference.
think the Zuckerbucks made the difference. So that's never been explained. How did he get this 81 million votes? So something similar seems to have happened in
Well, and,
Romania.
and
Yeah,
Trump got more votes than he did in his first election.
exactly. So that's
I
explained.
mean, so
Yeah,
Donald Trump bested
right,
himself, and
right.
then Joe Biden got 81. How does that happen?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's why it was there. So you look at the steady, votes for the Democrats and Kamala Harris's vote, reasonably in that range. What the
Yep.
one that stands out is just inexplicably is that vote in 2020. So something similar has happened in Romania, where we had the George Simeon, the sort of the conservative right-wing nationalist candidate. He got 44% in the first round, and then we had Mikoso Dan, the sort of the pro-EU, the anointed by EU candidate, got 21%. And then we have the second round, mysteriously, it's exactly, he suddenly, Dan got 54%, seemingly out of nowhere. And no one's really explained it. And again, there was a huge surge in votes from between the first round and the second round. And if one counts the surge in votes, then you say of the new voters, of the voters who have didn't vote in the first round and second, but did vote in the second round, Dan got 75% of that vote. That doesn't make any sense. That simply is a mathematical impossibility. So it cannot be. It simply cannot be. Now, of course, the EU has jumped in. Yep, freest, fairest, most transparent, most impeccably conducted election in all of human history.
We actually call it a Biden quality election.
Biden got. Um, but there have been a number of incongruous elements that have appeared in the on the surface, and one of which is Pavel Durov, who has sent out a number of tweets saying that he had been approached by French intelligence essentially to prevent conservative voices in Romania to be heard on his Telegram app. Durov is, of course, he's the founder, CEO of Telegram. He's currently under arrest in France. And so he's therefore in some ways vulnerable to the entreaties of the French intelligence.
Durov, why are you in France?
Why is he in France?
Didn't you get the message the first time round?
Well, he's under
I mean,
arrest.
and now it's like, let's go arrest him again. I mean, we know where he is.
He's still under arrest. He's still not. He can't leave the country. I
Oh,
mean,
so he's still confined. Okay.
he's confined. I mean, so he's. I mean, he's not in prison, but he cannot leave the country. He's still awaiting trial. Um, I mean, the arrest in itself was a very peculiar affair. Quite why he flew to France. He claimed he was going to have dinner with Macron. I mean, I don't know what they were going to talk about over dinner, but instead of dinner, he ended up in a jail cell.
Yeah,
Uh,
when you have your own private jet and that very attractive entourage, if we could put it that way, why don't you go to the Emirates?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Go to Dubai.
That's right. So he sent out these tweets, and here we has this. Um, we? Yes. So here this it says this spring at the Salon de Bataille in the Hotel de Crillon, Nicolas Lerner, head of French intelligence, asked me to ban conservative voices in Romania ahead of elections. I refused. We didn't block protesters in Russia, Belarus, or Iran. We won't start doing it in Europe. And then in another tweet, a Western European government, guess which, pick icon of a baguette, approached Telegram asking us to silence conservative voices in Romania ahead of today's presidential elections. I flatly refused. Telegram will not restrict the freedoms of Romanian users or block their political channels. And then you can't defend democracy by destroying democracy. You can't fight election interference by interfering with elections. And then here is this I missed one. Okay, and then we will do everything. And then he is quoting. He's quoting here Macron's closest ally, Valérie Ayer. Says we will do everything on the ground to ensure that the next Romanian president is pro-European. This is kind of an extraordinary thing to say. We will do everything on the ground to ensure that the next Romanian president is pro-European, said Macron's closest ally, key party member Valerie.
Okay, let's just make it patently clear here. We will do everything on the ground. We're not talking about debating points.
Exactly.
We're not talking about pitching a new pro-you platform.
That's right.
No, this is fixing it on the ground.
That's right. Exactly.
That means fiddling with the ballots. That's what everything on the ground means.
Right. Exactly. And then the producer says, so what did the head of French intelligence do in Romania a few days after this promise? And says, Nicolas Lerner, the head of the France's foreign intelligence, who asked me to silence conservative voices on Telegram in Romania ahead of its elections and later tried to deny it, visited Romania just 2 days before the vote. Official sources told this journalist. And then here's the story. Can't verify whether it's true, but nonetheless, it's a story that appeared. Nicolas Lerner, head of French intelligence, visited Romania 2 days before the second round of the elections. Official sources who wish to remain anonymous told us. Nicolas Lerner, head of the France's intelligence service, paid a brief visit to Romania on May the 14th in the midst of the electoral campaign for the second round of the Romanian presidential election. The purpose of the visit, a meeting with the heads of Romanian secret services, according to sources who wish to remain anonymous. He left for the Republic of Moldova that afternoon, perhaps to verify compliance with all democratic rules for conducting the election across the Prut. Now, we know Moldova played a very strange role in this election. I mean, because we know some, I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are, 50 to 60% of Moldova's voters are Romanian citizens, so they're eligible to vote in Romania's election. But whether there was, in addition, they transported the voters into Romania and thus they voted, this double voting. We don't know, but there have been allegations that voters from Moldova were bussed in to Romania. And here we have George Simeon, who declared, I officially ask Constitutional Court to annul Romanian presidential elections for the very reasons December elections were annulled, external interferences by state and non-state actors. This time proven with evidence. Neither France nor Moldova nor anyone else has the right to interfere in elections of another state. To all Romanians, I ask urgently the Constitutional Court to annul this farce. We will not give up and we will not betray. This is only the beginning of a great victory. And then Durov said, I am ready to come and testify if it helps Romanian democracy. And then, surprise, surprise. Oh no, this is this was the response. This was the response from the French foreign ministers. They had to respond to Durov. And they says completely unfounded allegations are circulating on Telegram and Twitter regarding the alleged French interference in the Romanian presidential election. They're completely unfounded. France categorically rejects these allegations and calls on everyone to exercise responsibility and respect for Romanian democracy.
Well, maybe the Romanian Constitutional Court should call on the French Foreign Ministry to send the head of intelligence to go and testify. If it's completely unfounded, then let's clear it all up.
Well, as we'll see, the Romanian Constitutional Court has already ruled that this was the freest, fairest, most transparent.
Always ahead of me, George. Always ahead of me. Keep going.
I don't need no stinking evidence. I don't need no stinking depositions. Great election.
Everybody, there's a lot of people in Romania that feel that they were robbed. And you know what? They were, in my opinion. As George says, the math, I mean, I'm not a math guy, okay? George is a real math guy, okay? But this is a very bad move,
Yep,
George,
I think so.
because no, because it's not reported a lot, but Romania is the apple in NATO's eye right now. Okay, I mean, okay, the Ukraine caper ain't going so well, but the caper in Romania is key
Right.
to the future of NATO, the largest NATO base being built in Romania. There
Yep,
were
absolutely.
under no circumstances are going to let this one slip by. And then the Romanian electorate knows this.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll go back to the first round. I think that is a very clear indication what's going on in Romania. So you have this external military alliance calling the shots in domestic politics. It can't go well, George. It can't.
I agree. What happened in Romania was the political establishment there and the establishment of the EU was caught flat-footed. They weren't expecting what happened in that first round at the end of November of last year when Georgescu won, and they didn't know what to do, so they just simply canceled the second round because they knew he was going to win. So they canceled it.
Yeah, I mean, but importantly, George, importantly, agreed, they were caught flat-footed. But importantly, they didn't put up a candidate or back a candidate with their message, hoping or through the power of argument that they could win. No, they gave up real fast, knowing there's no way in the world we're going to win here.
That's
So
right.
you cancel it. They showed complete weakness and the spineless attitude where, well, it's like children playing on a playground. If I can't win, I'm going to take not only my marbles, but yours too.
Exactly, exactly. And then they did it. They did that again in March when Georgescu said, "Fine, you're going to redo the election. Good. I'm putting my name forward as candidate." And no, you're not. No, absolutely, you're not. We're taking your name off the ballot. Oh, and we're issuing an arrest warrant. We'll figure out later what crimes you're supposed to have committed, but rest assured, there's an arrest warrant out for you. So, and they came up with this ridiculous. Well, what do you do when you have a problem on your hands? You blame Russia. It was Russia, Kremlin, but they were so weak and feeble at it that they couldn't even make a remotely plausible case of any Russian interference. But they can always rely on the media just to regurgitate, all of the usual claims, as whether in Brexit or with Trump or anyone else. Oh yeah, it was all the Russians.
Yeah, but George, that this for me is evidence that there was no Russian meddling whatsoever. Okay, why would Russia meddle in an election? They watch these elections
Right,
like anybody else,
right.
and they're saying, oh, there's a grassroots revolt against this ideologically like a patient with sclerosis, the EU forcing itself on the population, and the populace is going to win. We don't need to do anything. We
Right,
don't have to do anything.
right.
Just watch. And
That's right.
that's why I forget the exact word the Russian foreign ministry used. They called it strange or peculiar.
That's right.
A
That's right. Yes,
peculiar.
that's right. I think
It was one of those.
that
It
was
was a
it.
word like
Something
that.
like that. That's
The
right. It was something
peculiar
like that.
election in Romania.
That's right. I think Peskov, I think, used that word,
Yeah.
peculiar. Yeah, yeah. That's right. Um,
But I mean, I think that counterintuitive, that does make the case that Russia doesn't get involved in
yeah,
these things.
absolutely.
And why would they get involved when we could see you and I were one of the very few people, we were the few people actually watching this election as it was coming.
Right,
We would comment on it, it's coming up, it's
right,
coming up.
right,
We were
right, right.
looking at the candidates and so if it's not broken, why fix it? Okay,
Exactly.
so it
That's
doesn't
right.
make that claim doesn't make any sense.
No, that's exactly it, and that's always been the argument against Russian interference because hey, it's already going well. If you just look at it from Russia's point of view, why spoil it by interfering? It made never made any sense, and that's why they've never been able. I mean, all of the years of the Trump-Russia collusion and Mueller and all the rest of them, they never could even remotely present any halfway plausible case of Russian interference. Um, but this very long message from the French foreign ministry itself is a bit of a giveaway because it's very long.
Yeah, I mean,
And as you like to say, if you're explaining, you're losing.
yeah, I mean, if it is what the first, it's not even a paragraph, first paragraph sentence that should be all. If that's your position, why say more?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. France categorically rejects these allegations and calls on everyone to exercise responsibility and respect for Romanian democracy. Like canceling an election, that's your respect for Romanian democracy. The first round of the Romanian presidential elections last December was sovereignly annulled by the competent Romanian authorities following very real digital and financial interference from actors linked to
It was never
Russia.
presented. It was
None.
never
None.
presented to the public.
Never presented to the public. In fact, on the contrary, the Romanian president said the Russian plan was so dastardly and so fiendish that they left no trace of their planning. That's the proof that it was the Russians because there was no evidence that they were involved.
Well, I mean, if that kind of interference is so clandestinely maniacal,
And
why doesn't Russia
fiendish.
change all the elections in Europe?
Exactly. That's exactly. You would have thought, you know,
How did Barack Obama get a second term?
that, yeah, and why couldn't
Why is Keir Starmer a prime
that's
minister?
right, or alternative for Deutschland? Why didn't they just sweep the
Why
floor?
don't they have the chancellery?
That's exactly.
Chancellorship. It doesn't.
Yeah. And then it goes on. This goes on. This message from the French Foreign Ministry. Subsequent investigations by Romanian authorities and the European Commission later confirmed the seriousness of these interferences, including regarding the manipulation of the TikTok algorithm. I mean, all this has now been gone into. Everyone knows this TikTok campaign had nothing to do with Russia. It was an opposition politician, a liberal politician who boosted the TikTok presence of Georgescu in order to split the right. I mean, so there's nothing that we know that there's nothing to do with Russia, and even that's just a TikTok. That's just a
Well,
platform.
I mean, speaking of which, again, maybe I'm speaking out of school here because I'm not a tech person, but I thought only TikTok could manipulate its algorithm. You mean you and I can do that? We can manipulate the algorithm of TikTok? I mean, that's what that's saying.
That's a very good point. I've no idea. I have no idea at all how that can be done. I but but either way, what's that got to do with the election? Even if somebody came in and manipulated the TikTok algorithm and created all these bots. I mean, I don't know. You maybe create bots. I don't know.
I don't
Um,
know, George. I mean, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I've been to Romania a number of times in my life. It's not a particularly affluent place. There are very rich elites. It's just part of the course of Eastern European development. I mean, does everybody have TikTok in Romania? I mean, like everybody? Does
I
every eligible voter have a TikTok account?
don't
I
see.
mean, I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I'm blinded by this. But I mean, isn't it kind of like young people
That's what I was
doing
going
it?
to say. That my impression has always been that TikTok is very much a generational thing. I mean, if you're over
I've
30,
I've
you're not
never
on
seen
TikTok.
TikTok. I've
No,
never seen it.
no.
I've never been on it. I've never. I think maybe I've seen people on it.
Yeah, yeah, I have no idea. But exactly. I always thought, teenagers, making little dance videos on TikTok. I've never seen this as somehow a major political thing. And people over 30 are not on TikTok. And generally, young people, pretty much all over the world, don't vote. I mean, voting is something done by an older generation. Young people generally, they're goofing off. They're not voting.
Yeah,
Uh, uh,
yeah.
uh,
I mean, you got to hand it to some of them. I mean, they really apply their artistic skills, but in everything and anything but politics.
that's right.
They probably could, if we were on TikTok, they could probably sucker us into buying their favorite pizza.
That's
Okay,
right. That's right. Yes. Yes.
but voting for Joe Biden, I think that's
I
absurd.
don't think so. It says, in this context, the recent accusations against France are merely a diversionary maneuver from the real threats of interference targeting Romania. So it's
So
very
why did you
interesting.
why did this guy go to Romania and then right after that go to Moldova? I mean,
That's exactly
I
why
mean,
they.
was he there to trade recipes with somebody?
That's right, exactly. But it's very interesting. Oh, the real threats of interference. I mean, there seems to be an awful lot of interfering coming from the EU, France and the EU. Just as when Moldova, that Moldovan election, they kept talking about the Russian interference, even as the EU was piling in sackfuls of cash to try to buy that election for Maya Sandu. So here they go, real threats of interference. France calls on all Romanian political actors to exercise responsibility and defend democracy.
Why is France so concerned about democracy
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Romania?
yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I would just say France, maybe you ought to work on your Le Pen thing before
That's
you
right.
start lecturing others.
That's
Maybe
that, that's
just kind
exactly.
of a hint, kind of a nudge.
That's right. Exactly. Um, and then he goes on. See, this message goes on and on. In this context, the recent accusations against France are merely they're the same thing. And then, as a partner and friend, we recall that France has stood by Romania for its accession to the European Union, its reforms, its entry into Schengen, and its progress for its security as well, for example, by sending our soldiers 5 days after the sending of the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 22. The more you talk like this, the more you damn yourself. That's an awful lot that you're doing for Romania. It sounds like you've really invested in Romania.
Well, it sounds like Romania is a French project.
It does. France has stood by Romania for its accession to the EU, its reforms, its entry into Schengen, and for its security, we sent our soldiers 5 days after the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, why would they
Well,
do
why
that?
did they send troops?
Exactly. Why? Exactly. That was what I was thinking. I mean, why? Why is Romania in any way involved? I mean, this has nothing to do with Romania. So we sent our forces into Romania.
Well, I mean, you and I are just real sticklers here, but for its security as well, for example, by sending our troops under the auspices of NATO,
Right.
I mean,
That's that's right.
I mean, is it because they're a NATO ally, or does France have a specific security interest with Romania? I mean,
I,
people would like to know.
you're absolutely right. I mean,
Because if it is the latter, then maybe that's why they're meddling in their elections.
I think it's the latter. I think there's I mean, well, let's see, both obviously, obviously Romania is a part of NATO, but I think there's a special security relationship between France and Romania, and I think they were probably very concerned about Georgescu. Was it what was that? Yeah, lying about France, insulting it, is breaking this history. Getting very emotional, lying about France, insulting it is
A
yeah,
bit
yeah,
touchy here. I think we hit a button here.
that's right. He's breaking this history. You know, after all, it sounds like, hey, people in Romania are noticing France's strange involvement in this election, lying about France. And then he goes on.
Well, no, I mean, no, you're lying about democracy
You're
is
lying.
that's what's really at hand here. Okay.
That's right. The Romanian Constitutional Court declassified intelligence reports that claimed a state actor, believed to be Russia, was behind Georgescu's successful TikTok campaign.
Well, what state actor could possibly, you know, is this
Yeah,
Fiji? Is Fiji involved? Can we cross them off the list?
but I love the idea that Russia is thinking so far ahead. Hey, why don't we do a TikTok campaign on behalf of Georgescu? That'll win him the election. Oh, that's a bloody good idea. You know,
Well, no,
imagine
it's
something.
almost like, it's the Russians saying, let's get the Chinese to invent an app called TikTok. So in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, we can throw the next election in Romania. It's the same level of logic. Okay.
That's right.
Sorry.
Um, no undeniable public evidence has yet emerged to firmly confirm Russia's hand behind Georgescu's campaign. Let's read that again because I hand it. It's difficult because it has all these double negatives. No undeniable public evidence has yet emerged to firmly confirm Russia's hand behind Georgescu's campaign. Does that mean that he says there's no clear evidence that Russia was behind Georgescu's campaign? But no
Well,
undeniable public evidence.
it's
Uh,
also a weakness of the French language. I mean, this double negative stuff is,
Double negative is always
it's just not on, George. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
exactly. It's always very difficult to discern what that is. Um, Georgescu was barred from the rerun, sparking controversy and outrage among his supporters at home and abroad. I
Well,
wonder why.
at least one sentence is.
That's right. Um, and then so that was it. So you can see that they're arguing against themselves. You know, first they're outraged, highly outraged, and then they kind of put in these things. Well, that sounds like you have a problem on your hands here.
Well, and
And
this is French intelligence. I
this
mean,
is
if you care so much about Romania, why don't you know the answers to these
that's right.
things? Come on, it's your job.
That's right.
It's
That's
your
right.
job. That's what you're supposed to do.
So this is France 24. And the
One
media,
of the most boring networks in English ever
um,
invented. It is
it's
really, really
excruciating.
awful.
It's
I
awful.
mean, you forgive Deutsche Welle because they're Germans. They don't have a sense of humor,
Right.
don't have much taste artistically. Sorry, that's my opinion. But the French are it's worse than Deutsche Welle. That is such an indictment. Okay.
I agree. The only time I ever watch it is when they have these French elections,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they have about you know 12 people come on, 12
yeah.
talking heads. Every single one of them is denouncing Le Pen and National Rally. Every single one is like a
Well, I mean, I
flood of
think
them.
also you should watch those panels because the only thing that they really excel at on those panels is who's more flamboyantly dressed than the other. Okay, it's a fashion show. It's really what it is. You know how those French guys have the hair that just
Yeah,
goes like
that's right.
that? I mean,
Yeah,
why it doesn't? I mean, it
yeah,
defies, gravity and all kinds of weird
right.
things. But I always appreciate someone that has the taste in glasses, obviously. But as other, like the scarf. You're in a studio.
Others
There's air
go, yeah.
conditioning. What are you doing with the scarf on?
But
It's hot.
but I have to say
I work in a studio. It's hot.
that's right. But the glasses, without a question, they all have these very fancy designer glasses. I mean, and I think I do tend to get distracted by these glasses. You say, "Wow, that's a really cool pair of glasses," but they
And
they
and
all,
you
they all kind
know
of outdo one another doing them.
half of them speak English perfectly, but then they put on the layers of French accent, okay? Because they know foreigners or what. See, the Brits get away with it,
Yes,
because Americans don't know any better. But
yes,
there's something mysteriously mystique about
yes,
that French
yes.
accent,
That's
okay?
right. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. You say in English,
In
uh,
English,
in English,
the
very
Donald Trump, the
yes,
Donald Trump.
yes. How you say it? Donald Trump is a very bad president.
Catastrophe.
A catastrophe. It is a catastrophic. How you say in English?
Catastrophe.
Presidency.
All true. We're not exaggerating.
And then, so here's the headline: France strongly refutes Telegram founders' allegations of meddling in Romanian
Why does it
elections.
have to strongly refute? I mean, can't you just refute? I
Also,
mean, it's either or. Why do you have to strongly either or?
Also, it's a misuse of the word refute. You can say it rejects, but refute suggests that you're coming up with evidence to debunk and destroy a claim. So refute, yeah, I refuted your argument, because I came up with evidence to refute your argument. Here, as we'll see, it's just reject. Just as we saw that message from the French Foreign Ministry, they rejected. That's not the same as refuted. France's intelligence service on Monday denied allegations by Pavel Durov, the Russian-born founder of the Telegram messaging app, of meddling in Romania's presidential election. Durov was detained in Paris in 2024 and is under formal investigation by French authorities over illegal content on his popular service. And then he goes on. France has faced a barrage of accusations of meddling in Romania's elections, even forcing its foreign intelligence service to publicly respond to claims published by the founder of Telegram messaging app. George Simeon, a nationalist candidate and admirer of President Trump, has been the frontrunner of the Romanian presidency, but lost out Sunday to the French-educated, pro-EU, mayor of Bucharest, Nikos Ordan. And then on Sunday, Pavel Durov, the Russian-born founder, messaging service, published bombastic claims accusing the head of the French secret services of seeking to meddle in the Romanian election. But what's always interesting when you read these media outlets, they unquestioningly accept all the claims made by the French government. Not one minute. They call into question everything else, but they never once they call into question the claims of the French government. So bombastic. The French intelligence.
So, George, you're saying that France 24 can't find one person in the EU that is Eurosceptic
Right.
and would make the claim that the EU is fundamentally anti-democratic. They can't find
Not one.
one
No,
person.
exactly. The fundamentally
Not
undemocratic,
one.
anti-democratic.
Not one.
Not one. The French intelligence service, made famous by the fictional hit TV series The Bureau. Do you know this show? I don't.
What is that have to do?
No, exactly. The Bureau.
I
Rick,
mean, so if you believe the Bureau, then ipso facto you believe French
that's right.
intelligence?
Whoa, that's a good TV show. That really.
Well, that's how George and I felt when we were growing up watching the
That'd
FBI.
be yeah, exactly. Well, boy, they're always on the case. So it says the DGSE strongly refutes. Again, you're using that refutes allegations that requests to ban accounts linked to any electoral process were made on these occasions. That's the
Well, I
DG.
mean, Durov named names, didn't he?
He named names. That's right. That absolutely no, it never happened. In congratulating Dan, Macron, for his part, appeared to allege a different kind of meddling to back Simeon. the French president posted on X that despite numerous attempts at manipulation, Romanians made the choice for democracy, the rule of law, and the European Union. The moment you say something like, despite numerous attempts at manipulation, they made the right choice, democracy, rule of law, and the European Union. What were these attempts at manipulation? Where were these attempts? I mean, you say, despite these attempts.
Well, it's interesting. He's not mentioning. See, despite numerous attempts at manipulation, he doesn't talk about the manipulation itself. Okay,
That's right. Yeah,
the manipulation that succeeded. Okay,
that's right.
but he's talking about numerous attempts that failed, apparently.
That's right. And you still have to answer the question, like, how did these numbers, where did these numbers come from? These baffling, mathematics defying numbers that he got 75% of the votes that, of the voters who didn't vote in the first round and vote in the second round. 75%. That cannot happen. And then it says Durov was detained in Paris, blah blah. And the French intelligence.
No. But see, see the strategy, everyone. They're deflecting.
Yes.
They're not talking about, taking a deep dive in what actually happened in the
That's
election. Right. They keep talking about Durov, Durov, Durov. See the deception?
That's right. Of course it is.
They're trying to change your gaze to focus on something else.
Right. Exactly. That's right. So they keep saying Durov detained in Paris, and he's Russian born. He's Russian born. Never forget that. Russian born. Durov was detained in Paris under formal investigation, blah, blah. And it says the French intelligence service confirmed it had been in contact with him.
Oh, what, to trade recipes again?
The DGSE states that it has indeed been obliged on several occasions in recent years to contact PD directly to remind him firmly of his company's responsibilities and his own personal responsibilities in terms of preventing terrorist and child pornography threats. So they're always bringing up this mysterious child pornography, which is apparently ubiquitous, even though nobody has actually ever seen it. And then here's Le Monde, and asks this question in its headline: why is Telegram founder Pavel Durov accusing France of interference in Romania? Well, I don't know. I mean, let me take a wild guess. While currently under investigation by French courts, Pavel Durov has claimed that the French Foreign Intelligence Agency asked him to censor conservative voices in Romania without providing any evidence. I always loved it. These outlets will make any claim at all about Russia. Never once do they say, "Can we see some evidence, please?" Not once. Never once. Do you have any evidence that Russia interfered in this election or in that election? Russia was behind this campaign or that campaign? Never once. But apparently, without providing any evidence. Well, he says this was a conversation. I mean, what's he supposed to do? He's supposed to record a conversation? I mean, just, I secretly recorded this conversation.
Well, is he supposed to be like Jim Comey?
Okay. That's right. And says, what is Pavel Durov playing at? This is Le Monde. This is On Sunday, May the 18th, as Romania was voting to elect its new president, the head of Telegram, an encrypted messaging app, published a series of messages accusing France, and more specifically Nicholas Lerner, the director of the DGSE, of asking him to censor conservative voices in Romania. Durov did not provide any evidence to support his claims, which were immediately denied by both the French Foreign Ministry and, in a highly unusual move, by the DGSE.
Yeah, it is unusual. Well, if it is completely false, why are we reacting to it?
That's right.
Exactly. Why?
Yes, that's right. And that message from the French Foreign Ministry was awfully long. They really were going on and expressing their pain. How can you lie about France in this way? If Durov was indeed, as he claims, subjected to what he considers illegal pressure earlier this spring, why did he wait until the final stretch of the second round of the Romanian presidential election, just as the first exit polls were indicating a victory for the pro-European candidate to reveal it. Well, maybe that's because that's precisely the reason that when these strange results were coming in, that's when he revealed this. Don't find that that's not a very convincing point. Why did he wait until after the election to reveal this?
But why is Le Monde making a case against Durov?
That's a very interesting question.
Well,
How
why?
the media are just simply megaphones for governments. I mean, there's just basically they're making a case for the French government. That's their role.
Let the French government, I mean, Le Monde, I don't understand what's their standing in this story.
None. Other than that, I think more and more media are actually getting money from governments. I mean, we know about like USAID providing money to Politico. I think this is a regular thing that by one way or another, governments are funneling money into media.
Well,
Media are they're all in financial trouble. They're all kind of fairly desperate now.
yeah, but it also tells us, everyone, is just the level of gross incompetence in leadership positions. I mean, people have figured it. The peasants figured it out. Oh my God. And
Right.
then you get the paper of record to defend the state.
Right.
I mean, it's transparent to millions and millions of people. This thing was rigged.
Yes.
And and because people are aware of it, they invest such resources on the part of the state to
Right.
defend its illegality, my opinion. And
That's
that's why this is going on.
right.
People figured it out. We cheated too
Right.
crudely.
Right. That's right. The timing of Durov's announcement likely to encourage anti-establishment voters to turn out. So again, they're making this case. Oh, he likely
How can
to.
they impugn motives? Did they talk to him?
That's right. Also, what does Durov care? I mean,
Yeah.
I've
Oh
never.
yeah. Here's a guy, George, that is populating the planet with his prodigy. He wants to live until he's 250 years old.
Yes.
Okay. He
Right.
wants to transcend into some kind of spirit being,
Right.
like all these other Silicon Valley freaks. Okay.
That's right.
Why does he give a rat's ass
Right.
who is president of Romania?
Exactly. Exactly. That's the point. That's why. Why would he? What does it matter to him? Encouraged Anna to vote out, gave his message all the hallmarks of an attempt to influence the outcome of the vote. Now, after all this, the statement made by all of the various EU leaders during the past 2 weeks, issuing threats against Romania if they vote the wrong way, here's Le Monde indignant that apparently Durov had all the hallmarks of an attempt to influence the outcome of the vote.
When it's patently obvious that France was attempting to influence the outcome of the vote.
Exactly. And I mean, he releases at some point on Sunday. How do you hope to influence the outcome of the vote? People are already voting. On the day of the election, people are already voting. No one's going to be swayed which way to vote when people have already voting and have decided which they're going to vote. Then no one's going to change his mind on election day. And again, the Le Monde says, and what conservative voices could he have possibly silenced? Neither the former candidate Georgescu nor George Simeon, who lost on May the 18th, have official Telegram accounts. Simeon, until recently, preferred WhatsApp, a different messaging app despised by Durov. Well, he didn't say it has to be just one, either Georgescu or Simeon. Conservative voices, presumably people who support one or the other, do have Telegram accounts. I mean, I'm assuming that they're not the only two people in Romania who are conservative or whatever, and who might be on one of the social messaging app. So, well, who could he have possibly silenced? Well, I don't know. There may well be all kinds of voices that he could have silenced. He says he didn't, but I'm sure there may well have been. While supporters of both anti-European candidates did use his application to organize. So now you're admitting, while supporters of both anti-European candidates did use Telegram, including to coordinate the spread of false messages. False messages. It's always false. False messages. Simeon ran his online campaign primarily on Facebook and TikTok. Yes, but his supporters didn't. So what's the point of on each of these two platforms, which are much more popular than Telegram in Romania, he has 1.7 million followers. But the point is, that's just Telegram. How do we know what pressure was applied against other? How do you know what pressure was applied against WhatsApp? What's against Facebook? Or I mean, it's just like, oh, we didn't do a Telegram. That yes, Durov says on my platform, but that means pressure was probably applied. We know what happened in 2020 when pressure was applied against Facebook and Twitter, which are much more popular than that. He has 1.7 million followers, a significant number in a country of around 20 million. And then, after spending a decade trying to distance himself from Russia, why has Durov now aligned himself with a pro-Russian far-right candidate?
There's no evidence that he has aligned himself.
Exactly. He said we looked at his tweets. They're all about interference in the election. That's all. He hasn't in any way endorsed Simeon or Georgescu. No, he just said, I'm not going to, they put pressure on me to do this, and I'm not going to do it. Aligned himself with a pro-Russian far-right candidate. Simeon, incidentally, is not pro-Russian, nor was Georgescu pro-Russian. I mean,
it's so exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Because they're Eurosceptic, they're pro-Russian. There's no correlation there. Sorry.
None at all. On Tuesday, he offered to testify on Simeon's behalf in the legal challenge seeking to invalidate the second round of the presidential election. The Romanian courts dismissed the request on Thursday. Well, of course they did.
Of course they did.
And then Simeon denies being an ally of the Kremlin. He denies it. That's what somebody who's guilty would do. He would deny it. Yet his positions are aligned with those of Moscow, and Russia openly supported his candidacy.
Ergo, it was good that French intelligence thwarted the election. That's what they're telling you.
That's exactly what they're saying. But I must say I missed it. When did Russia support his candidacy? I think Russia talked about the interference.
That's news to me. No, what they talked about is how the election process was rigged against Georgescu, but they didn't talk about anyone else. Not that I'm aware of.
I don't remember that. And even with Georgescu, all they said, which is anyone legitimate to say, hey, the court just canceled an election.
That's what they commented on.
That's it. And that's a straight.
During the first round, I came across nothing.
I know, no, and they didn't. That just look. I mean, that's a legitimate point to make by anyone. Hey, how the hell do you just cancel an election? It's just unheard of. It's never been done in any so-called democracy that an election was just canceled on the eve of the election. In other words, people already started to vote in the second round, but the Constitutional Court just canceled it. Durov, however, has spent the past 10 years striving to make people forget Telegram's Russian origins. He has insisted that he is, if not a political opponent, then at least a victim of persecution by the Russian state apparatus. Not sure why some media would refer to Telegram as Russia-based. We have no servers, developers, companies, bank accounts, or offices in the country, he wrote on Twitter in 2023. Now, they're saying all this, and they still haven't presented any evidence that Durov is anything other than what he says. He's basically not. He has nothing to do with Russia.
Come on, okay, when was it? When was it? Come on, remember. It
was about 20.
Telegram was essentially shut down by the Russian government.
Yes, it was.
Essentially shut down for I don't remember. It was a couple of weeks. I mean, I don't know I don't know the technical term. They just put it into slow motion. It was like
Right.
they were putting a brake on it.
That's
So
right.
it would work, it wouldn't work.
Right.
A message, it would, when you're sending a message and
Right.
it's like sending, sending, sending.
Right.
And they just screwed around with it. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't think he even comes back to Russia.
Yeah, I don't think so. Um, but Durov is not just the head of Telegram since 2024. He has also been under investigation in France for a series of offenses related to Telegram's failure to cooperate with the justice system and alleged shortcomings in moderating the platform. Durov, who is presumed innocent, is under relatively lenient conditional release. Oh, well, that's lenient. Hey, I mean, in most civilized country, there is such a thing as you are released pending trial. Particularly, this is a civil case, or I mean, they're criminalizing, but ultimately there's no acts of violence or anything like that involved. Well, as you're waiting trial, you are entitled to be released. I mean, where do you just keep people locked up indefinitely pending trial, unless there's a real threat of violence, which there isn't in this case? So, oh, well, it's relatively lenient. Oh no, he should still be in prison. Um,
Well, when it's not your liberty, it's easy to talk about leniency for
that's
others. This is
right.
so absurd.
Exactly. And I still don't even know what the crime is in his case. I mean, it's that basically he owns a platform, but maybe some people misuse the platform. He
Yeah,
nonetheless,
well, some people have stocks in telephone companies in the United
yeah,
States. So if someone calls someone else to plan a crime, do the shareholders
right.
not just the telephone company, but the shareholders of the
They're
company,
criminally
okay?
liable. Yeah, yeah. Um, so
Yeah, that's in time immemorial. Okay,
yes,
I think probably passenger pigeons were involved in crimes. Okay, because they were sending information back and forth.
right.
Okay, and the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on this a
That's
long,
right.
long time ago.
That's right. That's right. And they're presenting it here that that's somehow he's committed some crimes. Yeah, it's a platform. It's a telephone company. Um, is presumed innocent, relatively lenient, but is prohibited from traveling abroad without a judge's authorization. However, he was denied permission to travel to the United States, where he was to meet investors. Earlier this year, he had been allowed to travel to Dubai, where Telegram's headquarters are located, but he was prevented from traveling to Oslo for some kind of one of these libertarian conferences. Um, and then this is likely the context for another message he posted on Tuesday, in which he publicly accepted an invitation to Oslo to attend a human rights conference organized by an American NGO. If his request is refused, as it has been, it would give Durov the chance to claim he was being censored. It would give him the chance. He's not really being censored. It just gives him a chance to claim that he was censored. I mean, then yeah, you're preventing him from attending a conference. No one even knows what crime you're accusing him of. You're preventing him from going to this conference, but that just gives him a chance to claim he's being censored.
Well, okay, and heads I win, tails you lose. I mean, okay, if this is Le Monde, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. You can be as flippant as you want. And the problem with this is that, well, why don't you give Durov a chance to why don't you ask him to explain it? Why don't you interview him?
Right.
No, heads I win, tails you
That's
lose.
right.
I mean, this is so petty.
Right. Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
so petty. I mean, well, okay, well, if it's such a clever move, let's see how clever he is. Why don't you
Right.
ask him?
That's right.
What's so hard about that?
That's right. That's right. That's right. An acceptance would be a victory. Heads I win, tails you lose. It's a clever maneuver, but Durov certainly knows that public provocations will not resolve his ongoing legal proceedings. I love that. I love this Le Monde coming up with these threats. It sounds like this is what the French Justice Department is likely to say, clever public provocations will not resolve your ongoing legal proceedings.
Yeah, but what do the two have in common, George?
I have no idea. I
See,
don't
why is that being put in there? Because they don't have anything to do with
know.
the other.
They're trying to discredit what he said. He's made a
Exactly.
number of very serious claims. And they're trying to discredit because they're showing some kind of a dark motive on his part. They can't possibly be true. It must be some dark motive.
Yeah,
Um,
but George, I mean, how much time we've been spending on Durov and not Romania here?
exactly. That's which is
God.
yeah. That's right. Because here's Euro News, and it says fact check. And the fact checkers are on the case. Did France ask Telegram founder Durov to silence Romanian conservatives? Paris has categorically rejected the allegations made by Telegram founder Durov, who has provided no evidence to back up his allegations. And then here there's some, and then he goes
Okay,
on.
well, I mean, but it's not incumbent upon him to do that. What's the guy's name? Lerner?
Lerner,
The
yeah,
what
Phyllis Lerner, yeah,
so you deny that you had a conversation with Durov. Do you deny that?
right. But that's why that's right, and that's why Durov said, "Hey, I'm ready to go to Romania and testify." Is Lerner going to go and testify? I mean, that would be one way of doing it. Let them both testify, and then we can judge who's telling the truth. So they're saying, "Oh, no evidence," but Durov is actually presenting an opportunity where we can test it. I will go to Romania and testify before the Romanian Constitutional Court that this happened. Let Lerner come along and present his case that he didn't do it. Um, Euro Verify reached out to Telegram asking for confirmation of the authenticity of Durov's statements and evidence for his allegations, but did not receive a reply. No evidence has yet emerged to suggest Durov's claims are true, and France has categorically rejected the allegations. Oh, well, that's good enough for me. In a statement, the French foreign minister described the claims as completely unfounded and a diversionary maneuver from the real threats of interference targeting Romania. And then the French Foreign Service refuted. But DGSC acknowledged it had been in contact with Durov on several occasions to remind him of his company's responsibilities and his own personal responsibilities in terms of preventing terrorist and child pornography threats. Now,
Okay, well, but if they've been in contact with him on several occasions, was it right before one of those occasions before
that's
the
right,
Romanian? I mean, just to clarify.
that's right, but exactly because
And
if you
see how that's just like a snake in the garden.
that's
Okay.
right, but that's it, and that's why if you're going to talk about motivations, here you have motivation. Durov is now stuck in France. He's awaiting trial. And it's quite plausible that these French intelligence services are leaning on him and applying pressure against him in order to get him to play ball and say, well, do you want this case to go away? Then you have to play ball with us. Um, and then here, last December, Euro verified, detected, and debunked. Whenever anyone says that they debunked something, TikTok disinformation campaigns falsely accusing European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen of personally intervening to cancel the vote. Well, this is very interesting. I don't remember anyone actually saying Ursula von der Leyen personally intervened.
That's
Nobody thinks she personally intervened.
news to me. News to me. I've never heard this.
When everyone talks about pressure from Brussels, they don't actually mean Ursula von der Leyen herself picks up the phone and calls somebody to do it. Well, we debunked that it was Ursula von der Leyen personally intervened.
Well,
Yep.
let's look at that again. It's interesting. Last December, Euro detected and debunked TikTok disinformation.
Disinformation campaigns.
Yeah,
False,
okay, but it's so passive.
very, very much so. Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, but if it was who they detected something, so somebody perpetrated
Right.
something.
Who exactly? Who's this TikTok?
Who's being
Yeah,
debunked?
that's right. TikTok disinformation campaign. Who's being
No,
debunked?
but it's not a TikTok disinformation. It's not like TikTok did it.
Right.
Okay. It's somebody. So we
Somebody
have
did
a
that, but yeah,
perpetrator
yeah, that's right.
using, well, then who's
Who did
that?
it exactly? Because
Yeah, it's been debunked. So
the
who?
sentence is suggesting that it was TikTok itself that did this disinformation campaign. Um, and then while the European Commission has opened a probe under the Digital Services Act into TikTok's alleged role.
Yeah, the Digital Service Act. That's the return of the Reich
That's right,
act.
exactly. That's right. That was that Thierry Breton, that
Yeah.
commissioner. Alleged role in Georgescu's campaign, there's no evidence to suggest the EU executive had any stake in the domestic judicial decision to annul the November vote. What does
Oh,
that
I'm
mean?
sure they had lawyers look at that paragraph.
That's right. Had any stake?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what
To
does that mean? Had any
suggest,
stake in it?
suggest.
That's right. No evidence to suggest had any stake in it. That's not exactly a clean bill of health. I mean, you read that, I don't know. Sounds like you're pretty much admitting the EU executive was involved. You're just saying one has no stake in it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and plus it's saying they're not denying it. They're just
No,
saying there's no evidence.
no evidence to suggest. Analysts have warned that Romania is particularly vulnerable to disinformation and foreign interference around key ballots.
What's the basis for that?
But particularly, why is it particularly vulnerable? Yeah. Um,
Well, that's why France has to shepherd
yes,
Romania down the democracy path because
that's right.
they're particularly vulnerable people.
That's right. That's it.
It's
Um,
such a I mean, they're condescending towards other Europeans. I mean,
that's right. Particularly vulnerable. Disinformation. Apparently, they just don't have. They can't. They
well,
can't.
they just don't have the smarts, George.
Exactly.
Okay, sorry.
That's right. They don't have it. Romania's foreign, interior, and defense ministries have accused Russia of orchestrating a propaganda campaign that claimed French troops stationed in Romania had been dressed in Romanian gendarmerie uniforms to interfere in the country's election. I don't remember Russia, putting that forward. The French troops dressed in Romanian gendarmerie uniforms. Do we know also whether that didn't happen? Is that something didn't happen? I mean, you're saying this was obviously false. I mean, do we know for a fact that this is false and it didn't happen? But you see, they've already put Russia in, so that means you're not going to read the rest of the sentence. Oh yeah, Russia propaganda campaign. Yeah,
Well, I mean, claimed that French troops stationed in Romania had been dressed in Romanian. Well,
gendarmerie.
what don't they have?
Their
Does Romania
their
have
own
a
Romanian.
military?
Yeah, why? I don't get why people.
I mean, why do you need? I mean, if you're going to use people in uniform, maybe use Romanians. I mean, what would be the purpose of French
I don't
troops?
know. And presumably, if the French troops in wearing Romanian gendarmerie uniform, they'll still be speaking French. I mean, I doubt whether they speak Romanian, so everyone will know, hey, you're not Romanian because you're not speaking Romanian. I mean, that would be everyone will immediately spot them from a mile off. I mean, it's not like the French are fluent in Romanian.
Why do you need French?
And then and then happily, the Romanian Constitutional Court, something like within 48 hours, it already issued its ruling rejecting George Simeon's request to annul the presidential election. And Thursday morning, the request by far right AUR leader George Simeon to annul the results of the presidential election, deeming it unfounded. The decision was unanimous, of course it was, and clears the way for the formal confirmation and validation of the election
So
results.
they did call witnesses, right?
2 days. That's fast. And then that I like it when courts move fast. Um, and then in the session of the May the 22nd, the Constitutional Court, in exercising its authority to ensure compliance with the procedure for electing the president of Romania, examined the request by George Simeon to annul the election for the office of president following deliberations. Oh, there were deliberations. The Constitutional Court unanimously rejected the request as unfounded. And then George Simeon, leader of this nationalist AUR party and the losing candidate, reacted in Facebook accusing the Constitutional Court of continuing the coup. Well, it was a coup. I mean, the rightful winner was prevented from running. I mean, leaving aside everything that happened last Sunday, the rightful winner, Georgescu, was prevented from running. And then EU News, Romania's Constitutional Court rejects Simeon's appeal, citing unfounded allegations. And here, the morning's decision is final, while the motivations will be published in the coming days. Not sure what the motivations are. They're going to come up with the reasoning as to why they said that. Simeon, a Eurosceptic and avowedly pro-Trump leader, did not accept the court's verdict. And it says the constitution of the state coup, and the accused alleged interference from France and Moldova, speaking of an orchestrated maneuver to manipulate the institutions and direct the vote. And then the Permanent Electoral Authority had already certified the regularity of the electoral process, describing it as, quote, correct, transparent, and integral. I love it. Correct. It was correct. That's we looked at those. The mathematically impossible numbers were correct, transparent, and integral, stigmatizing the spread of false information and accusing those disseminating it of wanting to undermine citizens' trust in state institutions.
Well, real cookie cutter stuff, isn't
That's
it?
right, exactly. And just in case we haven't got the message of how the political establishment has welcomed this result in Romania, here's an article in Foreign Affairs just out. This is the august in-house magazine of the American foreign policy establishment. It's the in-house magazine of the Council of Foreign Relations. It says, Romania's postponed reckoning, a rerun election averted autocracy. We averted autocracy, but left democracy in peril. And here, after months of turmoil, Romania has narrowly avoided electing a president who openly opposes the country's democratic foundation. It's always, every time there's somebody that you don't like, he's opposing the country's democratic foundations.
Well, the so-called state foundations
Yeah.
diverted democracy from
That's
my
right. Yes, those nice guys who cancel elections, prevent candidates from running, that's the country's democratic foundation. And then it says, although Dan's come from behind victory has halted Romania's slide into autocracy, for now, it does not resolve the deeper political crisis facing the country. Simeon received 5.3 million of the 11.5 votes cast. The breadth of support also raises larger questions about whether institutional guardrails in Romania and in Europe overall can be effective in countering a far right that seeks to undermine these democratic institutions themselves.
Well, I don't know the numbskull that wrote this, but then what is democracy?
Exactly.
What
What is
it?
it? What is it? Because what they're saying here, no, we can't have democracy, because if you have democracy, then the wrong candidate wins. I mean, that's always been the argument against democracy. Well, you can't guarantee that the candidate of the powerful interests is always going to win. Sometimes there's a rejection. People reject powerful corporate moneyed interests and vote for the wrong candidate. That's when you need to find some way to prevent the wrong candidate from winning and taking power.
Yeah, the 2016 election.
That's right. That's the wrong result. So how do we counter this far right? How do we? It's like the Ursula von der Leyen. We must go from debunking to pre-bunking. We need to prevent the wrong candidate from even appearing on the ballot. And then it says, in his campaign, Simeon made little secret of his intent to turn Romania away from Western liberal democracy.
No, he didn't.
He didn't. I
He
don't remember that.
challenged he challenged the grip of Brussels over the sovereignty
Right.
over Romania. No, that's just propaganda.
It is. It
It's
is.
not he wanted to use Western liberal democracy to be able to create a path for a Romanian path
That's right.
um, as it's drowning in
Right.
the sea of incompetence coming out of Brussels. I mean, that is just patently untrue.
Exactly. Patently are true. But this is what they always do. So where we are, which is sort of NATO, EU, continuation of the war in Romania, and all the other things, climate alarmism and everything else. That's what liberal democracy means. If you're against that, then you're obviously a threat to liberal democracy. So it's just, you define your terms. We are liberal democracy. Anyone who disagrees with us and challenges us is obviously an enemy of liberal democracy, and therefore we need to do something. We need to defend liberal democracy against such people.
He attacked the European Union, NATO, French President Emmanuel Macron, who he portrayed as an avatar of Western decadence. Yeah, he did.
What a shocking.
So you can't do that?
You
You,
can't. That's right.
I guess you can't do that.
You can't do that. And he also attacked Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky.
Well, that's a no-no. Okay.
Well, that's another. He's not even in the EU. Can't do that. He praised Hungary's authoritarian leader. You see, notice how they've always now said this. It's always the go-to phrase. Oh, the authoritarian leader of Hungary, Viktor Orban, who
Yeah.
incidentally they'll also say he's down in the polls and he may
Yeah.
lose next year. He's so authoritarian that he may lose.
This is kind of like ledger political science, the good guys and the
That's
bad
right.
guys. It's always that it's always leading the reader along.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
Um, uh, um, I don't know if Viktor Orban is an authoritarian. Well, then I guess there's something wrong with the Hungarian people, huh?
But
Again, we go
exactly.
back to what is
That's
democracy?
right. That's right. Exactly. Because hey, they're voting for the wrong person. Um, and he attacked Romania's civil servants. Apparently, you're not allowed to do that either. Threatening them with a Doge-style purge, which hasn't materialized even in the United States. But again, why shouldn't in a democracy, a politician be saying, "Yeah, I'm going to cut back on the bureaucracy." I mean, that's kind of what democracy is supposed to be about. Hey, we've got a parasitical bureaucracy that we have to pay for. Most of this bureaucracy isn't doing anything very productive. I mean, isn't that's kind of what democracy is supposed to be about? It's supposed to be challenge these kinds of structures. Isn't that authoritarianism when the civil service has to stay there in perpetuity and then there's nothing you can do in order to challenge it? I mean, to me, that sounds more authoritarian than somebody who's challenging a perpetual bureaucracy,
Yeah, because you can't lay a glove on the permanent
a permanent
bureaucracy.
bureaucracy.
Because
Exactly.
if you're not allowed to do that, then democracy is just a little plaything. It's just
Exactly.
used to use always and now in the European Union specifically is to legitimize the power of the permanent state. That's
That's right.
all it is. That's all these
That's
elections
right.
are about.
That's what they're all about. And therefore, anybody who challenges it immediately is declared to be an enemy of democracy, an authoritarian, and a follower of Putin, Trump, Orban. Take your pick of which villain that he's a follower of. Um,
The people behind this are going to rue the day. I'll tell you, George. This is not going to be uh, left as it is.
right.
This is leaving a huge look. Populist parties all across Europe are going to be studying this very
Absolutely.
carefully.
Absolutely. It says, although he did not call for withdrawing Romania from NATO, so he didn't call for withdrawing this huge threat. He didn't even call for that. Romania from NATO. He opposed all aid to Ukraine. Oh, so you're not even allowed to do that. You know, he opposed all aid to Ukraine and often echoed Russian talking points about the war there.
Yeah, I really, it's really funny. We come across this phrase, Russian talking points, but they never really
Tell
delve
us
into
what are these talking points?
what are these talking points? Okay.
That's a
Um,
very yeah, go.
Europe should be at peace. That's a Russian talking
That's
point.
right.
It
That's right.
just they never touch it because they know it is a trap for themselves, and
It,
they
it,
know it.
it, it is, but it's very interesting because as you said, they never say what they are. And yet, at any time, you can go to the Russian Foreign Ministry site, and the chances are there's going to be the transcript of a lengthy news conference held by Sergei Lavrov, in which he will explain what this war is about and what Russian policy is and so on. Great detail. You know, you can reject his arguments, but you have to actually present what the arguments are and then reject them. Just simply saying, oh, they're Russian talking points, that tells people, oh, well, I don't have to bother with that. That's just a talking point.
That's an excellent point because if you were to explore
Correct.
talking points, then you would see a position, and but you can't give
Right.
legitimacy to that position. That's why you
Correct.
have to dismiss it as talking points.
That's right. That's right. Um, and he was repeatedly praised by mouthpieces of the Putin regime, such as Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, Maria Zakharova, and the right-wing ideologue Dugin. Now, I don't remember Peskov or Zakharova praising him. They were saying that there's something deeply wrong with the Romanian political system. That's fairly obvious.
That's
But
all. Again, I may be wrong here, but I have no recollection whatsoever of Piskov or Zakharova saying anything about the Romanian election until after
yeah,
Ceausescu was thrown off. Okay,
that's right.
I may be wrong. I may be wrong.
Exactly. They didn't.
And
Um,
okay, and right-wing ideal. Well, Dugin is just Dugin.
let's do
Okay,
exactly. He has no official
he has no
standing.
power.
That's right. No standing whatsoever. And then paradoxically, this is always good. Paradoxically, the survival of Romanian democracy is
You know,
owed.
George, to get an article in Foreign Affairs, you have to start at least one paragraph with the word
You
paradoxically.
do.
It's but it's what do they call it? That it's their it's like their writing manual.
That's right.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
all articles in Foreign Affairs must start with one paragraph
That's right.
paradoxically.
Paradoxically, it's paradoxic is one of these words when you know something nonsensical is about to be
Well,
stated.
almost no one knows how to use it
That's
either.
right. That's right. So it's not a paradox. It's just nonsense. For instance, I mean, the former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg? He would always use that word paradoxically. He said, paradoxically, the more weapons we send to Ukraine, the faster we're going to come to peace. It may, that may sound
That's not a
paradoxical, but that's that, but that's the way it is. And yeah, it's so paradoxical that it's proved to be a completely nonsensical thesis. It's a well,
Well, when you use paradoxical, the signal that's being sent is that you have secret knowledge.
that's right. That's right.
You're
Exactly.
smarter than your
That's right.
reader.
That's
Okay,
right. Yes.
that's why people use it all of the time. Paradoxically,
Paradoxically. So so you're waiting, and you're like, I know what's coming. I know what's coming. The survival of Romanian democracy is owed in part to a move by the country's highest court that many Romanians regard as highly undemocratic. So in the name of democracy, they abolish democracy. That's paradoxical. That's the paradox. As with this spring's presidential elections, the first round of voting in November 2024 was won by a far-right candidate. But in that case, Călin Georgescu, an upstart independent candidate with large followings on TikTok, Telegram, and Discord, who was linked to Russian propaganda networks, no link whatever, extremist paramilitary groups, no, and fringe conspiracy movements, no. He was working for the United Nations, doing
yes.
that whole sustainable development stuff that the United Nations likes to work on. He had not so that paramilitary groups, French conspiracy
A
movement.
virtual unknown at the no, he had sterling establishment
Sterling
credentials.
established and had already in previous years been talked about as a potential prime minister. Not running for office, but that he would be a kind of a technocrat prime minister who would be appointed. Um, so so in other words, yes, abroad he may not have been well known. In Romania, he was a well-known character. Um, and a virtual unknown at the start of the campaign, Georgescu has somehow obtained 22% of the vote in the first round victory. Somehow, well, people voted for him. That's the somehow that he got. And then in December, Romanian intelligence services declassified reports that revealed coordination among Russian operated bots and paid users on these platforms. No, they didn't. It never revealed any of that. This just made up. This is foreign affairs. This isn't some propaganda stuff that you'd get on Twitter. This is foreign affairs that publishes this patently absurd stuff about it was revealed. Intelligence services revealed this.
Another style guide, the word I wanted was style guide. I guess I've seen it in the past, but I guess in this article you're not allowed to use footnotes because, as George has rightly pointed out, I'm listening to George read this, and I've never heard of that. I've
No,
never
no,
that's news to me. Really?
that's right.
Okay, but there's no footnotes that this
No,
person is not going to give us
that's right.
evidence.
That's right. And then, faced with the possibility that a candidate backed by Russia might capture the presidency and possibly overturn Romanian democracy, the Constitutional Court took the unprecedented step of annulling the entire election and ordering it to be rerun from scratch. Now, think of that sentence: faced with the possibility that the candidate that they don't like, supposedly backed by Russia, might capture the presidency, the Constitutional Court took the step of annulling the election. Well, that's it. That's fine. That sounds all right. The Constitutional Court. Hey, we've got the wrong man is about to win. We'll just cancel the election, and we can get the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States to say we did it in the name of democracy. And then, although investigations continue and little concrete evidence has been shared with the public,
Oh, you don't say. Yeah.
so having said all that, so little concrete evidence has been shared with the public, the Romanian intelligence service has disclosed that it has traced a wave of more than 85,000 cyber attacks targeting the country's electoral infrastructure. Whenever they say things like this, this is nonsensical. The author has no idea what the hell a cyber attack is and whether 85,000 is a large number or a very small number. But they just put this forward because they know, most people are ignorant about these things. So, 85,000, electoral,
Well, George,
whatever the
George,
electoral infrastructure even means.
w- neither one of us are educated in this, but I have, as part of my email system here, every day I'm told how many times the system has been attacked.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And
exactly.
it just, probing, looking for, and it's just done randomly. Okay. I mean, again, George is right. I mean, I'm a victim of cyber attacks all the time, and they don't succeed because they use good software.
Right.
But it's kind of everything is a victim of cyber attack. Everything.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. It goes on all the time. So 85,000, it may be a large number. It may be a very, very small number. You might be saying, hey, every day there are about 10 billion cyber attacks. So 85,000 is an infinitesimally small number. Um, and the Kremlin has not been shy about expressing its views about Romania's handling of the election. After the constitutional,
Yeah, it's not been shy. I mean, Russia's democracy is they're lectured all of the time, and then are you surprised they turn around and say, and so you're the expert on democracy here? I
yes,
mean, again, paradoxically, I mean,
paradoxically, that's right.
this is just as usual. It's just a establishment
That's
rag,
right.
okay?
That's right.
But everyone,
That's right.
but
That's right.
that is one of the pristine publications.
That's
You
right.
must be published. published it. You
That's
have to be published there because you're not allowed to go to the next step.
right.
Okay, up the ladder. Okay,
That's right.
so
That's
you'll people will write the most ridiculous things, and
right.
then it's on their CV. Check foreign
That's right.
affairs.
Foreign affairs, exactly, exactly. So I have the imprimatur of America's foreign policy established. Then he says Peskov accused the Romanian state of having deprived voters of their right to choose their preferred candidate. Well, that's not an accusation. That's a statement of fact. I mean, I don't know. You don't have to accuse the Romanian state deprive voters of their right to choose their preferred candidate. I mean, I don't know. There's anything there that one can raise objection to.
It's not where was the editor here? Okay,
He
Piskov stated.
he stated it's a factual matter. He cast the disqualification of Georgescu as evidence that the West's commitment to democracy was both conditional and hypocritical. That too is a factual statement. There's nothing at all that's to be said. And then, since then, Russia's meddling in Romanian politics through social media, uh, especially Telegram, has continued. And then during the spring election campaign, the Russian nationalist and Kremlin ideologue Dugin issued statements in support of Simeon, calling him a champion of real people. Well, by saying that this is Russian meddling, he is a Russian. But that doesn't mean that that's in any way represents the Russian government meddling. I mean, a Russian, like anyone else, is entitled to his views and entitled to express his views. He's entitled to say what he likes about Simeon. But they want to suggest that this is the Russian government meddling.
I've always tried to explain to people it would be like Lyndon LaRouche,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
being quoted by foreign newspaper. Lyndon LaRouche says that Jimmy Carter, blah, blah.
Right.
No,
Right.
I mean, yeah, Lyndon LaRouche he's an individual. He
Right.
has a right to say, but they accredit him with some kind of
That's right.
authority and
That's
power. Well,
that,
Lyndon LaRouche never had any authority or
that's right.
power.
That's right. Exactly. Um, and um, and then they talk about Durov. And again, notice how they all coordinate. Suddenly, they're all again talking about Durov, and and then that's it. So they, that's this Romanian election. But the thing one has to say is that they managed to pull this off. The Brussels bureaucracy, the Romanian political establishment, they pulled it off. They were caught flat-footed last December. They didn't know what to do. They just simply canceled the election because they had a disaster on their hands. Came up with the whole baloney about Russian interference that they couldn't substantiate. Then they prevented Georgescu from running, and now they have their preferred candidate. And anybody at all who calls this election into question is a threat to democracy and is repeating Kremlin talking points.
But it's not going to end here.
I don't
It's
think
not
so.
going to end.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Constitutional Court decided, that they wouldn't accept the injunction that it was an unfair election. Of course, we expected that. But when I think of inauguration and things like this, he's going to say, "This is not our president. This is not our guy," and
Right.
it's going to stick with people.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, as usual, this was incompetent. George is right. Why would the French intelligence folks write such a lengthy, laborious, I mean, you protest too much,
That's right.
okay?
That's right.
I mean, this is, again, people think George and I are just kind of ideologues ranting along. No, we have plenty of evidence. We give you evidence.
That's right.
And we show you their words, not our words.
That's
It's
right.
their words.
That's right. That's right. And their words basically discredit themselves. I mean
That's it. That's
lengthy
it.
statement by the French Foreign Ministry. Is anyone going to believe it? I mean, does that sound plausible to you?
All their accusations are a confession.
All right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And that's exactly where we stand right now. It's not going to be pretty, everyone. And Romania, again, it doesn't get a lot of coverage in Western media, but Romania is an important node of the North Atlantic cabal.
That's right.
And that's what they are.
Right. That's right.
Why do you think the French get involved? Why do you think Brussels gets involved?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
because this is a keeper. We got to keep this one
That's right.
big time.
That's right.
Okay, and George and I have talked about great length, and we want to do it again now. It's the Black Sea, everyone. That's what this is all about.
That's right.
They never give up.
No.
They never give up.
No,
Okay.
no, that's right. It's the Black Sea. They want to control the western Black Sea coastline, as we were talking about Georgia the other day, they want to do it in the eastern Black Sea coastline as well. That's why it's all these places are so strategically important, and why NATO and the EU place such inordinate attention to these elections and are so ready to scream, "Oh, election was fake, it was fraudulent," as opposed to this election was pristine, transparent, perfect.
Also, I don't want to get ahead of our skis here. Okay, and I don't want to go in great length about this, but another reason why to have absolute control what's going on in Romania is because, and now this is my theory of the case, things could unravel, things are unraveling in Ukraine. They could speed up. George and I don't do the prediction game, but they're keeping an eye on there because there's going to be a ricochet effect. Why did this conflict start? Why was it conducted the way it was? And you're going to have a lot of people in Europe, because George and I are absolutely, I mean, we've already given you the great story of how this all happened, but that's not mainstream yet, okay? The New York Times will kind of dabble in it a little bit, what's they call it, a limited hangout is
Limited
what they do.
hangout.
So they're already doing the limited hangout,
Right,
okay? Because they want to determine the narrative when the shit hits the fan,
right,
okay?
right,
And this election is really important
right,
because the Romanian electorate is very divided, like so many other places in the Western world.
right,
And so Romania has to be this bastion. They got to protect it because when things go sideways and when they start going sideways, it's really hard to determine where it will go. So I think this is one of those French intelligence goes to Romania right before the election. Come on, guys. This is important to them.
right. Yep. Yeah, no, that's right. Um, and as I've mentioned before, there is going to be an election next year in Hungary. There is going to be a massive operation to try to get Orban out. I mean, he's been the weak link in the EU NATO axis for some time. They've thrown already an enormous amount at
All right,
Orban.
let me ask you a question. Just your personal opinion, okay? In a fair election, do you think he can win again?
I think he can. I think he can. But what's working against him is, unfortunately, you know, people are kind of a little dumb. People are kind of lazy, and they're kind of tired of him. I mean, he's been there now 15 years, and when people say, "Okay, well, let's have a change," and even though you'll tell him, "Yeah, okay, you're bored, you want to change," this guy, his opponent, is terrible. They're absolutely awful. This Hungary will be completely taken over by NATO and the EU, but you have to say there may well be sufficient number of people who say, yeah, we need a change, and who make a terrible choice. I'm not sure it will happen, but I wouldn't rule it out altogether.
Yeah, the what's going on with the whole democracy project in the EU? There are different factions. George and I are in one faction
Right,
demonstrating how it's unraveling and the politicking of it, the craft to force democratic outcomes. We've learned a lot.
yeah,
The folks in Georgia have learned a lot,
right,
okay? But unfortunately, so does the Euro
yeah,
people. Okay. So, I mean, this is kind of, eyeing each other eyeball to eyeball because I know your tricks and I know your tricks. Okay.
that's
And
right.
I think that's why Hungary, this could be the epicenter of these countervailing trends. They're just going to be full
That's
force.
right. Absolutely. 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 And
And everyone, George and I are saying this right now. What's the population of Hungary?
about 10 million.
About 10 million. Well, when the election campaign starts, a lot of people that don't follow these things, they say, wow, I didn't know Hungary was so important. Okay, but it's going to be made into be
Whoa,
really,
huge,
really important. And so you're
huge.
going to hear a lot about this, okay? And George and I, and particularly George, have been following it, is that this has been a steady drumbeat. I mean, The Economist, they got their
That's right.
I want another story by Friday.
That's right.
Another one on here.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
It's a drumbeat, a
That's right.
drumbeat. Deutsche Welle does a drumbeat,
That's right.
drumbeat.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's
And
exactly
it's only going to intensify, and a lot of money is going to be spent.
yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that you and you're right. That model of what was done in Romania. That everyone watching it know. Hey, you can do it in Romania. You can do this
It's the
elsewhere.
trick. We
That's right.
figured it out.
That's it. That's right.
We got the secret. We got the secret sauce,
That's it. Yeah.
and they got it from America.
That's
Lawfare.
that's it. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, stay tuned, everyone. We knew that this caper would come to an end the way it is, but I'm absolutely convinced this is going to have a ripple effect. It's people going to say, and on the face of it, it's one of these. You've got to be kidding
That's
me.
right. I agree. I think because right away there's a real question about the legitimacy of this guy. I mean, he's the president. Half the country, if not more, no, he didn't really win this election. I mean, it undermined Biden. It weakened Biden from the beginning, from day one, when more than half the country didn't really believe that he had won the election. That's going to be a real problem for the new Romanian leadership. People don't believe that you won, and that
Yeah,
completely
and
undermines your authority.
watch everybody. After the inauguration, he's going to be feted by all the Euro elite. He'll be invited here by
Yeah,
here. You know what? That's going to create even a greater division because the Romanian that voted the other way are going to say, yeah, that's their president. It's not
that's right.
ours.
I
That's
agree.
your president.
That's right. That's right.
That's
Yeah,
what's going to happen. That's
I'm sure
definitely what's going to
what's going to
happen.
happen. I'm sure.
The first picture with von der Leyen and ooh,
That's right. And kissing von der Leyen, and then you'll have Macron flying into Bucharest,
yeah, holding everyone's hand in a weird way.
yeah,
I don't know what's going
biting
on
the
with that.
ear and everything. What Macron likes to do. He likes to bite ears.
And he holding hands
Yeah,
and
holding hands. Yeah.
wrong with this guy? This is so cringe.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, at least Biden could say he has dementia. Oh, in nursing homes? Oh, you see old guys doing stuff you wouldn't believe, you
Right.
know?
Right.
They don't know what they're doing.
Right.
It just instinct kicks in. You're not supposed to touch
Right.
Gramps, Grandma. Don't do that, okay? Oh yeah, it happens a lot. It's weird. All right, anyway, we got to keep an eye on this here because, as I've said, maybe for the fourth time, this story isn't over. It is not over.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
And as I said, now we have these models.
Yep.
Okay. And the next stage is Hungary.
That's right. Exactly.
And we have our man in Hungary.
Yes. On the spot.
All right, this is the beginning of our wrap for Sunday here. Okay, buddy, I will. Okay, the tip jar. All right, the tip jar. Go ahead.
The tip jar is I'm not so interested in Romania or the Romanian Constitutional Court, Emmanuel Macron or whatever. My only interest is the tip jar and whether it's moving in the right direction. And Buddy, I think is thinking there's some fakery going on. There's something untoward taking place with the tip
Right,
jar.
that's right.
Yeah,
Look at you see his ears?
yeah,
That tells you everything.
that's right.
He's
Missing
mad.
votes. He does. I know about missing money. I don't know about missing votes or missing money. So if you have any coins, paper, there's apples. I want paper. It's to say paper, crypto, whatever, gold coins, silver coins, everything acceptable into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve the technology. And above all, we'll have these dogs, not snapping at us all the time about the tip jar. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.